Greetings, Patriots. I'm Perry Green, and this is God in America. I recently attended the Oklahoma Second Amendment meeting in Yukon, Oklahoma, where I was blessed to hear Aiya Kelley and Oklahoma State Representative J.J. Humphrey. It was an excellent event, and I decided to try something different when I heard them. I recorded both speakers using my podcast app, and I'm excited to share those recordings with you. I hope you will enjoy their insights. The first speaker is Aiya Kelley, who's well known for her beautiful rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, which you may have heard at various GOP meetings where she sang our national anthem. Aiya serves as a church music director and is a prominent leader within Oklahoma's conservative grassroots movement in the GOP. She has run for the state Senate and will run to be the national committee woman in the GOP for Oklahoma. Aiya has resided in Guthrie for more than 30 years and earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in piano performance from the University of Central Oklahoma. Notably, she was the first woman to graduate from the same institution with a Master of Arts degree in jazz studies and sound engineering and music production. Kelley completed her 11th year as a professor of piano and music at Langston University and has taught all grades from preschool through high school, leading her high school vocalist to regional and national titles, according to her website. We're trying to schedule a time for Aiya to interview on our podcast. In the meantime, I wanted to pique your interest with her presentation at the May 10th Oklahoma 2A meeting.
They say it's all about rights, but rights can't fix the wrong that we do to God each day. How long can we stand strong? And all I got is one question left. If we turn our backs and spit in His face, is God still gonna bless the USA?
I didn't bring a clock up here, so if I go over, it's not my fault. As I was just looking out at this crowd, I think I only have one person from Logan County here, but it's one of my favorites, Connie, and I've really enjoyed the friendly competition with Karen. She's gotten, asked me some questions, but I've got some ideas from her, and so you guys have a great leader here. And Stephanie, we've been appointed for a while. I know I see Jay Stegall back there, and I was music director at his family's church for about 4.5 years at Chickasha. And really grew to love the Stegall family, before he ever, got into politics, or maybe he was, and it was secret, don't listen about it. And then Brian just found his birth parents, and we have some things like that in common. And so I'm just looking around. Yeah, lots of good friends here. But I'm most proud today to have my dad with me, Bill. He's right here behind my camera. He's only 95 years old, so he has to stay around to try to keep me in line, is what he says. But Sharon had asked me to share a little bit about how I've gotten to where I am now in my fight for liberty and for Oklahoma and for America. And so I'm going to try to talk really fast. It is a much longer story that I'd be happy to share with you sometime. But I was born on the island of Okinawa, which is basically just on the opposite side of the planet from here. And my father was an Army guy, and my mother was a Filipino Okinawan lady. And my father left when I was 5 months old. He was, like I said, in the Army. And my mother, to make a long story short, she overdosed on drugs and died when I was 15 months old. Her mother had moved to Florida with a new military husband. And so before my mother died, the military had told my grandmother that she needed to come get her children that she had left. So her new husband adopted the children. And I guess they didn't think about me as a, not quite 1-year-old baby. I guess they thought they could just carry me over here with them. So he didn't adopt me, and I didn't have a passport or a visa, and so they left. And I was left in Okinawa with one of my uncles. And so he and his wife were having some marital problems, so I got passed around a little bit and ended up with a man and his wife. The man spoke 13 languages, so he interpreted for my father, who was a missionary. And that story is that Bill, my dad, joined the Air Force when he was 18 and became a master sergeant and retired after 20 years in the Air Force. His last stint was in Okinawa, and they started a little church while they were there. And so they retired back to Bethany. They were the elite in their community. Retired Air Force master sergeant with a new home and a new car and new furniture. And God came to each of him and my mom separately and said, I want you to sell everything you own and go back to that little church. Well, they were a little nervous to tell each other. They didn't know that God had told the other. And so that's what they did. And one of my mom's best friends said, well, you can't, some of these things you have got for wedding gifts, you can't sell those. And my mom said, I can't talk about it. I got to sell everything. So they sold everything, and they were pastoring that little church in Okinawa. When I ended up in their home, they were babysitting me, and they got news that my mom passed away. So they decided that they would like to adopt me. And so they asked my uncle and his wife again, she really didn't want to take on another little girl. She already had two. And so they told the missionaries that they could adopt me. My mom said that they said, well, we'll come pick her up and get her things and bring her back. And my mom said, no, we'll just bring her and get her things. So I say that I was a curly-headed little waif who was left. And my uncle then did get a divorce and moved back to the Philippines. I've been to the Philippines plenty of times. One time I was there for 2 weeks when my father held a revival there at one of our churches. And I know where I could be. I'm 52 years old. I know that the young ladies in the Philippines have a hard time surviving. And there's different things that they have to do in order to survive. If they can't get married to a military guy and get over here. And so maybe I wouldn't have lived to be 52 had I been left in the Philippines. So I'm alive today because of God and because of my amazing parents. My mom is bed bound. She's 92, and I'm her full-time caregiver. So in Okinawa, I lived there till I was 13. I speak Japanese fluently. But I would remember going on base for 4th of July. And I remember this one time specifically, I was probably 4. And we were there for 4th of July in the big football, there was a stadium and a football field. And they brought the flag out. You know how they carry it flat? Like there's a lot of people carrying it and it comes out flat. And I just remember looking up, and my mom had tears streaming down her face. And I saw my dad standing at attention. And I had heard the stories of their friends that had gone to war and had never come back. But I just remember looking up and seeing that and thinking, this is a very important moment right here. And this was when I started loving our flag. And then they sacrificed and sent me to a private school where we said the pledge every morning and we prayed. And so that began that seed of patriotism and the love for this country that I had not even been to yet. We didn't come here until I was 4 years old. And when I was 5, we went back to Okinawa. So I hadn't even been to America yet, and I had this love for our flag. And so time went on, and I was timid. I know y'all don't believe that, but I was very timid. If you would have told me 25 or 20 years ago that I would be doing something like this right now, I would have said absolutely not. If you would have told me that I would have traveled with General Flynn and staying at Mar-a-Lago, I would have said there's no way. But I'm going to skip over a lot of things and jump to the General Flynn story because people love that. But I graduated. I have 2 degrees from the University of Central Oklahoma, and I'm working on my doctorate through Aspen University. I've taught at Langston University for 11 years. I believe that education is very important, but your children have to be grounded in their faith and their traditions, the godly and patriotic traditions, before you can send them off to public education or even to send them to work in the secular world. But we do have to survive in this world. So we can't just shield our children at home. My daughter's an attorney for the House of Representatives. She's 30 and she got that job at 25. So for me, education is extremely important, but we do have to be careful. I got married at the age of 19 and I have a wonderful daughter, and her father and I divorced before she was 2. And I raised her by myself for 17 years. I was never getting married again. But if y'all know George Kelley, you know why I got married again, because he is absolutely one in a million. I left him home to work today. That's why he's not here now. He would have been here if he could, but Dad came into place. So I'm going to jump to the General Flynn story because everyone loves this story. Probably about 4 years ago, I had a call and someone asked me if I would come lead his event in the national anthem. And I said, sure. And it was 3 hours from my home. But he had mentioned something about General Flynn coming. And so my dad, who grew up through the entirety of the Depression and doesn't give this money away easily, right, Dad? I'm not telling a secret here. He was so moved by what General Flynn went through that he was trying to find a way to donate to General Flynn when he was going through the unfair treatment. And he prayed for General Flynn every day. So when I heard General Flynn was coming, I was like, oh my word, I've got to get these 2 guys together, whatever it takes. So I had this plan to go down and take my dad. He's going to meet General Flynn. And so we confirmed with Michael the night before. And I said, and General Flynn's going to be there. And he said, no, he's not going to be. I said, I thought you said he was coming. He said, I just mentioned that I heard he was coming to Oklahoma. And I said, oh, okay. So he said, well, you don't want to come now, do you? And I said, Michael, I said I would come. I would be there. That's training from this man right here. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. You're faithful and you're dutiful and you do what you're supposed to do. So George and I drove 3 hours. There were about 20 people there. It was Jackson Longmire's campaign kickoff. How many of you remember Jackson? So there were about 20 people there. I sang the national anthem, all over with. I'm getting ready to leave. And Jackson looked at me and he said, I think it was like next month. He said, what are you doing next month? I said, what do you need me to do? He said, well, General Flynn's coming to town. And I'd like for you to sing the national anthem in Tulsa. And I said, I will be there. So yeah, get my dad all ready. We're going to go. So we drove to Tulsa. And all I could think was, how can I get my dad and General Flynn hooked up? And, if you see me, I make things happen. So I'm eyeing, like, which of these people are the security guys, And so I was going up and I was like, is there any way you can get General Flynn and my dad to meet? Little did I know what General Flynn was like. He was going to shake every hand and take every picture and sign every autograph if he had to be there till 2 a.m. Well, I have the pictures to prove this. When he met my father, he grabbed my dad's jacket like this, and he wasn't letting go. And he just hung on to my dad and he said, I want you to stay right here with me. And so my dad said, he wanted me to, and he's just meeting all these people. And my dad said, am I supposed to stay here? I said, I told you to stay there, so you better stay there. So I stood just like this, the person that was so shy. If I had my best friend from college here, he would tell me I was scared of my own shadow. So I'm singing the national anthem and General Flynn's right here. And someone said, how did you do that? I said, I have no idea. So when it was over, General Flynn looked at me and he said, so what are you doing next month on like the 20th? I said, what do you need me to do? He said, well, I'm holding an event in Tampa. Could you go? And I said, I'll be there. And so I went to Tampa. And while we were in Tampa, he said, what are you doing next month? And I said, what do you need me to do? And he was going to the next spot. So we did this about 3 or 4 times. And then he just looked at me and said, can you just come to all of them? And I said, whatever you need me to do, General. When General Flynn asks you to do something, you just say yes. So then one day he contacted me. He said, well, I'm going to Mar-a-Lago, which is to open with the national anthem. I was like, let me think. I said, I'll be there. And then they asked my dad to open with the pledge. And so President Trump was going to be there. He was going to do a photo op. And so we got in there and they said, President Trump's too tired. He can't do this. And I said, you mean my dad's not going to get to meet President Trump? And General Flynn said, let me check something. So I didn't realize we were in the grand ballroom and President Trump was upstairs. I didn't know it was his house. And so General Flynn walks over to these stairs and there's 3, guards on the stairs. And he said, I didn't hear what he said. And they said, well, do you have someone connected with the team? And General Flynn said, I've got the big guy's number. So he called and I don't know what he said. And he turned around to me and he said, he's coming down. And just like that, it was like Trump was waiting at the door. He just came out and I grabbed my video and I did not remember until I watched it. And I go, I'm going to die. And he came down and then the guard said, put your phone down. So they had promised 1 photo only. And so, but my dad came here, right? Because he worked on jet engines for 20 years. So they got a picture with my dad. And then my dad goes, would you take a picture with my daughter? And so he said, sure. So I went over there and then George was standing there by himself. Well, that was rude, right? So I said, could you get one with my husband? And General Flynn said. And so then President Trump went to go upstairs and he turns around and just looked at me and goes, I want a photo with her by herself. So if you see the picture, it looks like my eyes are like this. I can't even believe it. I tried to get my daughter to, fix it, but it was worse. So that's the story of how I got to all of that. And sometimes I just step back and my dad sometimes in the mornings he'll go, was that true? Did that really happen? I'm pinching myself. Well, the little baby that was abandoned on the other side of the planet also pinches herself very often because what an honor and a blessing it has been to have these experiences. Never could I have done those things on my own. I never want to come across as braggadocious. It has all been God and my parents, or I would be nothing. And so that's just the tip of the iceberg of my story. And then I want to let you guys know that I am feeling very drawn to run for National Committee Woman for our state. But any of you know that any title I've ever had, I have used to blaze a trail. I believe one time someone told me this title I have is nothing. It's very small. I said, then make something of it. And so my goal is to blaze a trail for the state of Oklahoma that every other state will look at and say, that's what we want our national committee woman to do for us. Because if you elect me, I serve you. This is not a title that I take and run with and do great things that I want to do. This is a title that you guys will bestow upon me if I'm elected. And I would be so honored to serve you in that capacity. So thank you so much for letting me speak today. I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, if we turn our backs and spit in his face, well, God still bless.